You know, you're 4 days out from an election when the truth just stops mattering. Some of the liberal and legacy media are going after President Trump, calling his latest remarks about former Congresswoman Liz Cheney, quote unquote, violent rhetoric. This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner, here with my co-hosts Kayleigh McEnany and Emily Campagno. Also joining us today, Tomi Lahren, Fox News contributor and host of Tomi Lahren is Fearless. Indeed she is. It's on Outkick. And Charlie Hurt, Fox News contributor and Washington Times opinion editor. Here is what former President Trump said about Liz Cheney.
She's a radical war hawk. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. You know, when the guns are trained on her face. You know, they're all war hawks when they're sitting in Washington in a nice building saying, oh, gee, let's send 10,000 troops right into the mouth of the enemy. But she's a stupid person.
Liz Cheney responded on social media with this. This is how dictators destroy free nations. They threaten those who speak against them with death. We cannot entrust our country and our freedom to a petty, vindictive, cruel, unstable man who wants to be a tyrant. And the legacy media also quick with reactions in these headlines. CNN, Trump says Cheney should be fired upon an escalation of violent rhetoric against his opponents. Washington Post, Trump suggests war hawk Liz Cheney should have guns trained on her face. New York Times, Trump attacks Liz Cheney using violent war imagery. And Rolling Stone said this, Trump fantasizes about putting Liz Cheney in front of a firing squad. Now the Trump campaign is responding. Here's a quote. President Trump is 100% correct that warmongers like Liz Cheney are very quick to start wars and send other Americans to fight them rather than go into combat themselves. This is the continuation of the latest fake media outrage days before the election in a blatant attempt to interfere on behalf of Kamala Harris. Charlie Hurt.
Well, I think you said it, Harris. This is kind of the silly season. This is where the truth doesn't matter. It's an obvious distortion of what Donald Trump was saying. And you know, I think it's kind of interesting. He doesn't actually get credit for one of the most significant things he's done within the Republican Party, which is to drag the Republican Party from being the party of global intervention and wars into a party that believes in being very powerful and terrifying our enemies, but using power very judiciously. And obviously he was attacking her on those grounds. But I also think that at the same time, it's also not part of the campaign's closing argument is not Liz Cheney. The closing argument is the border and the economy. But, you know, Donald Trump doesn't do things the way normal campaigns do, and he's been very successful at that. But I wish we would just sort of talk about the, you know, economy and the border and crime.
Or the gift that they got handed.
Yes, and they were trying to change the subject. Democrats want to change the subject from the garbage comment to something else, and this is what came along.
Yeah, he's created another shiny object. But regardless of all of that, they're blowing out of proportion his words if you just take the words versus the context of that.
Absolutely, Harris. I want to have a word about the media, to your point exactly. Look, CNN at 11:18 a.m. had a chyron up, and this is what the chyron said. Liz Cheney slams Trump after he calls for her to be shot. Okay. We all heard the statement. Nowhere does he call for her to be shot. That is a defamatory chyron, but if you're walking through an airport and you cursorily read that, you think that's what he said. If you listen to what he said in context, it's very clear what he said. He said, what if the shoe were on the other foot? And it wasn't us sending your boys and girls to war, but our politicians were going to war. How would they feel if their life was threatened? Would they take those decisions way more seriously? And it made total sense to me because this is at Donald Trump's core. If you know him, if you've observed him for 8 years, one of the cornerstones of his policy is something he said on Wednesday, and it stood out to me. He said Wednesday, they've sent our blood and treasure to fight in stupid foreign wars where the countries don't even know who we are and we've never heard of the countries. He views your son, your daughter as a treasure. And when it's taken lightheartedly and sent off to war, that's why he was such a critic of the Iraq War, he takes that personally. What if the shoe were on the other foot? That is all he was trying to say.
He also, Emily, knows what we're up against with Iran now. And Israel perched to do something with each other that could look like war. He knows that Russia just had North Korea put troops on the ground to help them fight against Ukraine, and they have kits and they're ready to go. Like, he knows all of that. So then the question becomes, you know, how much is he right about the fact that it would seem like the left is pretty disengaged from that military population? And I feel that way sometimes, having grown up brat. Right. Army brat, but sometimes just a brat.
Exactly. And, you know, I felt that, to your point, Kaylee, that his comments were coming with the nuance and the wisdom of a former president. This is someone who said, our blood and treasure does not occur without a human making the decision, a commander-in-chief, a Congress to approve the funding for that to happen. It was coming from, in my opinion, a position of appreciation of the depth of the import, of the weight of sending our troops to war, to combat, to deployment. And so the fact that, as always, the media chops it up, amputates it, distorts it, and then puts it, what can fit in the 120 characters on a chyron, to me, it's such a disservice to the American people and to a president that was actually speaking very, very crucially about the nuance, about the weight of those decisions, and about the humanity required to make those decisions. But as always, they're grasping, yes, for the shiny object. Let's get the turn out of the garbage, trying to save themselves, trying to demonize him yet again. But if you just give it more than 10 seconds, more than a glance at a screen, you're going to see that it was actually full of totally poignant, important perspective.
You know, Tommy, it has been a criticism of people on the left, leadership on the left, that they reflexively get us deeper into wars. I mean, look at Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's watch for the last 3.5, nearly 4 years.
This is going to be a weak spot for Kamala Harris and her campaign, whether it's those folks in Michigan that are not happy with the way that she's handled things with Israel and the way that she's spoken about it, or, you know, spending the amount of money we're spending in Ukraine. People are tired of endless wars, and Donald Trump delivered no new wars. People know that. They understand that. But beyond this, to the point about the new shiny object and the way that they're exploiting this, I don't think it's going to work anymore, because when the media cries wolf so many times, even your casual person who's walking across a TV and sees the chyron, I think they've cried wolf about Trump so many times. They've likened him to Hitler. Trump supporters are Nazis.
So
they're
true.
Garbage. They're racist. They're misogynist. He's going to put you in camps. He's going to break up interracial marriages, which is something Whoopi Goldberg alluded to on The View. Once you say that over and over and over again, I think people look at this, even people that are just normal, casual viewers and don't really indulge in politics like we do, they've cried wolf so many times, I think they see it and they go, you know, there's a pretty good chance they're taking this out of context. On the other hand, you cannot take out of context what Joe Biden said about garbage. That lives, and even we're going to talk about it later, even though they tried to mess with the transcript, that is what it is.
They did mess with the transcript. They
Mark
didn't just
Cuban
try.
calling the women around Trump weak and dumb. You really can't take those comments out of context, and even when they try to clarify them, it doesn't look any better. So I think you cry wolf this many times, people don't believe you anymore.
And you really can't take out of context their record. Just look at the record.
Right. Yeah.
On all of it.
Speaks for itself.
Yeah.
All right, Fox News Digital has confirmed the White House altered that transcript that Tommy and I were just talking about. The transcript is of President Biden's actual words, the controversial garbage comment that that's how he sees Trump supporters. They fixed it in the official transcript. And you know who got mad? The man who's in charge of the official archives. I mean, when the people in your house call you out with the facts, I don't know, does it hurt? Live report next.